I'm Deepak Chopra, and here I am again with our esteemed yoga instructor, Eddie Stern. And we are continuing our series on yoga for enlightenment. And today's topic is
We are in chapter 3
Mhm,
of Yoga Sutra.
mhm.
We are in the Vibhutis, and today is karma.
Okay, so Vibhuti attainment and dealing with karma right now, right?
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
rather, freedom from karma, maybe.
Well, so this particular one, Sutra 22, is that karma is either fast or slow in fructifying, in bearing fruit. By practicing samyama on karma or on portents, on the signs that we read, foreknowledge of death can be acquired.
Wow, I love it. Although in my case, I'm planning my death in Mahasamadhi when I choose to.
Well, that is the ultimate. So, shall I read a little bit of the
Yes,
commentary and
absolutely.
then you tell me your thoughts on
Okay.
this? Okay. So, karma action, which fructifies or bears fruit, as our span of life, is of two kinds. Some which are going to expose or fructify quickly. This is called sopakarama, and others which are going to arise slowly. For example, when a wet cloth is spread out, it dries quickly, whereas if kept in a lump, it takes a longer time. Fast fructifying karma is like a fire which, fanned on all sides by wind, consumes dry grass quickly, while slow fructifying karma is like fire applied gradually in different places to a heap of grass, thus taking longer time to burn. So by practicing samyama on them, the knowledge of the end of this life can be gathered, and it can also be gained from portents. So basically, by doing the deep meditative practices on the two different types of quick karma or slow karma, we can have a foreknowledge of when all of our karma is going to run its course. Just from judging, well, this is a fast one, this is a slow one, I can estimate when it's going to end.
So when we see or when we say karma fructifying, it is basically balancing the karmic balance sheet, so to speak, right?
The
But
karmic debt.
the
Yeah.
karmic debt, but also, we have, would you say we have karmic credits too?
We have karmic credits also.
Okay, so in the Buddhist tradition, they talk about, I think, the karmic credits as very important when you feed a monk, or when you donate to charity, or when you do a good deed for someone without selfish motivation, then you're accumulating karmic credits. Anytime you behave in a way that takes you to connecting with the life force in all sentient beings through empathy, compassion, joy, equanimity. These are the four divine attitudes in Buddhism.
The Brahma Viharas.
The Brahma Viharas, you're getting credit.
Mhm.
And every time you are, in a way, triggered into hostility, anger, resentment, fear, guilt, shame, um, lack of self esteem, which is projected on the other as violence, either in thought, word, or deed, then that's you're accumulating credit. And the goal, of course, is to have a even balance sheet, right? Which is freedom. Now, I'd like to ask you this very important question, which is asked all the time. Uh, do we have free will, or are we victims of destiny, which means karmic bondage, literally? And the answer seems to be that if we begin the journey of self awareness, then we recognize that we are both. Most of the time, we act as if we don't. Okay, it's because our reactions to the world are automatic. We are triggered by people and circumstance into predictable outcomes. These days, they say pushing your buttons, right?
Mhm.
I can push your buttons and get a response I want if I'm self aware. because the more I'm self-aware, the more I'm aware of the other. So now that gives me freedom not only to choose my responses, but actually trigger other people's responses, which is not a good thing because you're actually manipulating other people, which would not be good karma,
Right.
right? So, how does one practice this vibhuti?
Okay, so
Vibhuti means attainment,
yeah.
right?
Um, I don't know exactly how one practices this. I can only, say what is said in the
I
text.
can comment on that
Yeah,
once you tell
yeah,
me because I've had the advantage
with
with
Maharishi. Yeah,
Maharishi of being initiated into these vibhutis.
yeah. First, I'll try to answer the earlier question you asked about fate or free will.
Hmm?
And Swami Sarvapriyananda, who you have spoken with,
Hmm?
was once asked about this. Do we have free will, or is, does it exist? And he said that either you have free, or you're free, or you have will. It's not going to be free will. The two can't go together.
That's beautiful,
Either you're
actually.
free or you're bound by will. And
That's beautiful.
isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. Robert Swoboda, Dr. Robert Swoboda, quoting his mentor, the Agori Vimalananda, has said that we have a certain amount of choice and a certain amount of things that are determined, predetermined due to karma. Certain things we have to suffer, and certain things we're going to be able to change the course of action through self-awareness and through disciplined practice and things like that. So as our awareness, self-awareness begins to expand through practices, then we can determine, as you said, these predictable outcomes by behaving in certain ways that will lead down the road towards more freedom and less bondage. So that's pretty much the purpose of, like, quote unquote spiritual practice, or the adhyatmic practices. So I think what's happening here in this vibhuti, and then you can tell me what you learned from Maharishi, was that the as you become more aware, for lack of a better word, but the veils of perception begin to become less thick and more light is shining through, so you can see things more clearly. You read the signs clearly, and you also know that if I do this action, what is going to be the result? Because I've made the mistake before. But if I do this action, what's going to be the result? Because I've tried this and I've had a positive outcome. So, and then as we begin to shift our behavior for more predictable outcomes, say a better future or better state of mind, then we begin to feel what right action is in us. Now I can have a sense that I can sense that if I do this thing, it's not the right thing, and so I don't act on it. Or I sense, yeah, this is really the right thing for me to do, and I always get in touch with that feeling before I act, because the feeling is going to direct to me what the outcome is going to be. And then the next stage from that is that um, the feeling is always there. So we have a measurement before we even have to decide anything, because we know that now I'm established in knowing what to do, and it becomes automatic. And so then there's a total behavior shift. Then it's like, that's who we become. We don't have to think about the actions. We don't have to look to the future. We become, in the moment, the action and the outcome all at the same time. And at that point, we can read the signs very clearly because we've seen them all, and those are the portents. And then we can see what is a fast karma and what is a slow karma, because we have become action itself and the outcome at the same time. And therefore, we know what's going to happen before it happens, like death. So
So,
that's just my understanding from the
no,
text.
that's beautiful because if you think about this, then we have two extremes, right? We have extreme karmic bondage on one end, which you might say is addiction.
Okay.
Okay, that's addiction is the extreme of bondage, right? A little less extreme than addiction, I would say, is attachment. A little less extreme than attachment is, I would say, preference. A little less extreme than preference is choice, or at least you think you're making a conscious choice. Okay. A little less extreme than choice is intention, and little less extreme that is subtle intentions, sankalpa. And then finally, there is choiceless awareness, which is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom is choiceless awareness because there is no need anymore to exert the will of the separate mind. It's in a way Ishwar Paranidhana. You know, you've surrendered to the divine in you, which knows everything. Okay, it's pure knowing. So what you said is very interesting. Spontaneous right action. Now, what is right action is not necessarily a moralistic right. It's the most evolutionary in the moment. It's the most evolutionary response in the moment without thinking about it. Okay. So the most evolutionary response comes when one is established in that choiceless awareness, and the subtle intention, which might even be unconscious, you're not fully aware of it, it's the level of para or pashanti. That subtle intention is the spontaneous right intention in that moment, in timeless being, in not even in time, in timeless being. So basically, it's a state of flow. And I was introduced to terms like Ichha Shakti. Ichha Shakti is the spontaneous fulfillment of desire. But then there was Kriya Shakti, the right action in the right moment, the right response, which means most evolutionary. And most evolutionary means that which expands your awareness from very limited awareness, which is fight, flight, reactive, whatever, to unbounded awareness in that direction where there's spontaneous knowing. So, spontaneous knowing is, I would say, um, the highest form of intuition. Intuition as a knowledge that is contextual, that is relational, that is um, doesn't have a win-lose orientation. In a way, eavesdropping on the bigger cosmic conversation in between the archetypal conversation, all the Shaktis, Kriya Shakti, Cha Shakti, and Gyan Shakti. Gyan Shakti is this pure knowing, which goes beyond, you know, the mistake of the intellect, which comes from separation. So
The
there's
prajna aparad.
pragya aparad. Pragya aparad. Aparad means mistake. Pragya, mistake of the intellect. Because the mistake of the intellect is subject-object split, obviously. So it's a very interesting thing because, once you get to that state, Kriya Shakti, Ichha Shakti, Gyan Shakti, all happening simultaneously, then there is no anticipation, there is no regret, there is no resistance, there is only flow. So that would be the highest level of freedom, at least as we experience it. Now, one could say that even your desire for freedom is part of the karmic program because, you know, you may not have the desire for freedom in this lifetime or at all. Even you don't even think about it unless you're an addict and you want freedom from the addiction. Then you go all the way, from this extreme to this extreme. But at this extreme, there's only moksha. At this extreme is only karma. And in between is a gamut of experiences. So I think what happens is as we practice this vibhuti, is the karmic destiny has to fulfill itself anyway.
One way or the other.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
But you're not interfering with it and you're not adding to it.
And that's the karma yoga is not adding to it.
The karma yoga is not adding to it. We can even call it kriya yoga if you want. Okay. So here is of course, these techniques can't be taught through a book,
Mhm.
but they're initiations. And the initiation for the technique, in my case, and
Mhm.
all these techniques, is you actually go through the entire sequence: yama, niyama,
Mhm.
yogasana, cultivating different seats of awareness, pranayam, and then immediately into withdrawal of the senses, interoceptive awareness. So you get to know what's happening in your body. And then and only then are you ready for dharana. In this case, the dharana is a little intention. And the intention is, of course, freedom from karma. So the intention is moksha. That little intention is the sankalp. And depending on your life's situation and your level of awareness, um, that some of it is rapid metabolism of karma, if you want to call it metabolism and release, and some of it is slow, but you're not interfering.
Mhm.
That's
One way
so
or the
the
other.
vibhuti then is on moksha.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think would be the benefit of having a foreknowledge of death, your own death knowledge?
Yes, so the benefit of foreknowledge of what we call physical death ultimately is to be free from the construct of death, because actually birth and death is happening in the moment. Every thought is born,
Mhm.
and as soon as it is born, it dies. Every image in consciousness is born. As soon as it's born, it dies. Every emotion, as soon as it's born, it dies. You try to hang on to it, but you can't. Actually, if you try to hang on, this is very paradoxical. If you try to hang on to a thought, you can't. If you try to hang on to an image, you can't. If you try to hang on to an emotion, you can't. And so every perception, I say, okay, focus on that perception. After a while, you get fatigued. You want to change your perception. So there's no experience that doesn't die as soon as it's born. What we call death is not the opposite of life, it is the opposite of birth. And birth and death are the continuum of life. So what happens
And
by
birth and death are a continuum of karma also.
birth and death are also a continuum of karma.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Mhm.
So the advantage of knowing your physical death is you actually realize that it's an illusion. It was an illusion all along because life itself doesn't die. Okay, only its expressions, sensations, images, perceptions, feelings, thoughts are born and they're dying. What gives continuum is the story that we call karma,
Mhm.
which is our internal dialogue, which says, that's my story.
Mhm.
Okay. But of course, if you examine your story deeply, you will see it's very provisional. For every story you have, there are infinite versions, even in yourself. Forget the other person. So each of us is addicted to our personal story, and each of us is also addicted to canceling other people's stories because they don't agree with our story. That's all the conflict in the world. And yesterday you said that that's why we call planet Earth Karma Bhumi.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Um, Here we have this idea. So we're looking at the vibhutis of the perfections, and the samyama here is on karma or portents, on reading signs.
Yes.
And uh, the vibhuti is not on necessarily the foreknowledge of your death. That's just going to be a side effect of the
Byproduct.
meditation on karma. So really what Patanjali is saying here is like there's something important for us to meditate or to do the deep concentration practice on karma, and in particular on our storehouse of karma, the ones that are slow, the ones that are fast, meaning the ones that are instantly perceptible to us, or the ones that maybe we're still trying to work out or we're not quite aware of, and to somehow meditate deeply on the interactions of our life to see where our bondage is.
Yeah,
Would
but
you?
when you meditate on these interaction of life, it's so subtle. There are certain things that cause transient discomfort in my body or
Mhm.
transient pleasure. They come and go. There's certain things that persist.
Yeah.
Okay. So this particular sensation is persisting.
Mhm.
Now, this particular sensation is persisting. Gallbladder, liver problem, spleen problem,
God
kidney
forbid.
problem, heart problem, lung problem,
Mhm.
brain problem, etc.
Mhm.
Muscle problem,
Identity problem.
identity problem. These are, if they persist, that is the slow moving karma that you need to,
Mhm.
and intuitively you also know, okay, I have a sore knee because of such and such.
Mhm.
I can't sleep because of such and such.
Mhm.
So and so is a heart problem because of such and such. Too much sugar, whatever, inflammation,
Mhm.
lifestyle, whatever. So you can see actually by doing sanyama on just the bodily sensations, because bodily sensations are karmic imprints.
Mhm.
Okay, some are transient and some
Yeah.
persist.
And when you meditate on one of those bodily sensations, especially an uncomfortable one, for long enough
It
time,
reveals itself
and it dissolves.
and it dissolves because you're bringing the light of awareness.
Yeah.
You're bringing prakash.
So basically, this is a vibhuti on dissolving karmic knots through the light of awareness.
Yes, and the other day you showed me a pranayam, with the om sound
Mm-hmm.
that actually dissolves the big karmic knots at the level of matter,
Mm-hmm.
at the level of emotion, and ultimately even the level of knowledge, because all knowledge is ignorance. We say all knowledge is ignorance because it's partial knowledge, it's not whole knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And even the partial knowledge is transient for that particular situation. It's a beautiful, beautiful
Beautiful.
thing. Anything else we want to say about this? Actually, you could teach the pranayam om right now.
Yes, we could.
We can sound it out,
Yeah.
explain it without going too deeply into the release of the knots, because some people may not be ready for the
Mm-hmm.
release of the knots. We can say actually amplifying the abundance of material plenitude, the abundance of feelings, the abundance of knowledge, and ultimately transcending all
Mm-hmm.
of that through the Om Pranayama. And why don't we just show it to
Yeah,
everyone?
for sure. So this is a chanting of Om, which is it, and it's a pranayama as well. And my friend Robert Moses showed this to me. And basically, what you do is you simply chant the sound of Om. The sound of will be focused at the Brahma Granthi, and this is at the area of the Muladhara chakra, in the area of the anus, and then but of course in the subtle body, and then the sound of U is at the heart center area, the Vishnu Granthi, and then the sound of is at the third eye area, the Shiva Granthi, and then the silence after extends above the head. Um, Brahma Granthi is our attachment, or not necessarily attachment, but the things that bind us to survival issues. And the Vishnu Granthi, things that bind us to emotions. And then the Shiva Granthi, the things that are binding us to either our spiritual knowledge or identity of spiritual things, or you
Partial
know
knowledge,
partial knowledge. And sometimes there's an arrogance that can develop around thinking we are spiritual or that we
spiritual
have
arrogance. Yeah,
knowledge, and that's like one of the most subtle of the knots to get past.
correct.
And then the silence after can be meditated on, as Robert said, about 12 inches or 12 angulas, which is 12 finger widths above the head. And then we hold the breath out for a moment in that silence. So basically, we move the sound up through the different levels of where we're bound. I don't even want to call them attachments. I'll just say where we're bound. How do we know we're bound? Because we were born. There you go. Problem solved. So we can sit up comfortably straight. We want to do this 3 times.
Yes.
Okay. Inhale. Oh. Inhale. Oh. Breathe. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.